feeling about, do you all want to use handhelds, or
We're
do you
gonna-
want to use a...
We thought we'd use the hand.
Check, check.
Okay.
Perfect.
Thank you.
Check, check. So those are all great.
Great.
You know, we're live streaming. Just if people are going to ask questions, they need to grab a mic. That's the only thing. I left this in case you need it.
Thank you.
I'll keep an eye on it in case you need it.
Do you want to kick us off? Or? Okay. Yep. Thank you, George. I would just want to welcome everyone and thank you for coming. And for the folks on the live stream, we want to thank you. And please, we welcome your questions. We think that we're going to last about 45 minutes. So that will give you a sense of how long we think that we're going. It will depend upon how much interaction that you have. So first off, I'm Philip Hamilton. I'm a member of the committee, and I'd just like to introduce our committee members. So I'd like to start in no particular order, just by whom I see, with Misha Pride and Ruth Romer, John Bancroft, Laura Lyons, Phoebe Bloom, and Elise Magnuson. Those that are also members of the committee that are not with us this morning are Phyllis Wilkins and Kathy Coughlin. And I know Kathy actually isn't here presently, but we should wave because I know Kathy is watching on the live stream. She's been a very present member with us. Also, Stan Kuzio is obviously not with us, and we wish him, he's been in our prayers as he recovers from his health issue. And then also someone that you might not know is Pat Ryan. Pat was a member of the standing committee, and she's a member of St. Paul's in Brunswick, and the bishop asked that there be one diocesan member of the committee, and it's been a real joy to have Pat with us because she just went through the search process for their new rector at St. Paul's in Brunswick, and brings just a wrath of how did you do that time? Those kinds of practical questions, so we really appreciate it. So we're going to start off, the theme of what we're doing this morning is really to talk to you about what we've done up until January 31st. So I know that we've been hearing about search for a long time, and what are these people doing and what's taking them so long, right? So we wanted to give you a sense of what's going on. And so in these days, you have to start with a video. So we're going to start with a video, and the reason for that is the video really is a good explanation of some of the things that we've done So interspersed within the video are some notes, and then Misha and Phoebe are going to come up and talk a little bit about some of those things that have happened. So with that, Sam, it's about 6 minutes, and as Sam is teeing this up, I really want to thank John Hennessy, because we said, John, we want to do a video, and we don't know how we're going to do it, and we don't know quite why. We know why, but we don't know quite how, and we want you to be the lead. And as it's coming up, just one quick thing. John was very good about it, and you'll see that he's done a great job. But he also told us, I wore the same clothes for 3 days in a row in case he had to do any retakes on the video. So let's start.
Hello, my name is John Hennessy, and I serve as the senior warden here at the Cathedral Church of St. Luke in Portland, Maine. For over 150 years, this cathedral has stood in the heart of our city as a place of worship, refuge, and community. And right now, we are in an important moment in our history. We're searching for our next dean, and I'd like to tell you about who we are, what we're becoming, and the leader we hope to welcome. When you step through these doors, you're stepping into a living community of faith. We're about 400 communicants strong, with about 160 people gathering each Sunday across 3 distinct services. This nave, built in 1867, hosts our traditional 10 o'clock service, the Rite to Liturgy, enriched with music that honors our Anglican choral tradition while embracing new voices and cultures. And as you can see, we take great joy in celebrating the seasons. Right now, the cathedral is dressed in its Christmas finest for the celebration of Christ's birth. But we're much, much more than one kind of worship. This is Emmanuel Chapel, an architectural gem. At 7:30 a.m., people gather here for a quiet spoken service. At 5:15 on Sunday afternoons, our lay-led still point service offers contemplative silence, music, and reflection. This space holds something very sacred, a different kind of beauty, a different way of meeting God. We believe God meets us in many ways, in tradition and in innovation, in word and in silence, in community and in quiet prayer. But worship is just the beginning. This cathedral has always understood that loving God means loving our neighbors, especially those who are most vulnerable. Every week, our food pantry serves about 80 families, and St. Elizabeth's Jubilee Center provides essential items to those in need. Through our Walking Together ministry, we stand with immigrants, LGBTQ+ people, and those facing discrimination or uncertainty. This past June was quite remarkable for us. We welcomed 16 new and renewed members through baptism, confirmation, and reception. Our bishop, Thomas Brown, led us in an important conversation about what it means to be a cathedral, not just a parish, but the symbolic center of the Diocese of Maine. That same month, we served as the gathering site for Portland Pride, Maine's largest LGBTQ+ event. Our lower hall was alive as people of all ages created signs and came together to celebrate. Later that same month, we had the joy of witnessing one of our own ordained to the priesthood. From baptism to ordination, from honest discernment to joyful witness, that month captured who we are at our very, very best. I want to be very transparent with you. Our previous dean served us for nearly 20 years. Now, we're in a time of transition, becoming a renewed version of ourselves. As we prepared to search for his successor, we learned something very important. We had unresolved conflicts that needed our attention. We did the hard work. We developed communication skills and ways for addressing conflicts in real time. And you know what we discovered? Our collective desire to be better together. We're not the same community we were a year ago. We're stronger, more self-aware, and ready to grow. We're also being realistic about our resources. We have a healthy endowment of over $4 million, gifts from previous generations. But our pledge income doesn't cover all our operating expenses. We need a leader who can help us grow in stewardship while making wise decisions about our future. These historic facilities require ongoing care. We share this campus with the diocesan offices, and we're exploring new ways to be good stewards of these spaces while serving our community. So who are we looking for? We need a leader whose faith is alive and authentic, someone who radiates joy because they genuinely know and love Jesus Christ. We're looking for someone who is curious about people, who listens carefully, and who builds community naturally. We need a pastor, someone who will care for our parishioners and staff with warmth and wisdom. But we also need a leader who can step into the broader community and who can navigate the intersection of faith and public life with grace. We're looking for someone who loves liturgy, who can celebrate everything from traditional choral evensong to innovative contemplative worship. Someone who preaches with insight and conviction. Someone who's committed to justice and has proven experience as a community leader. Here's what I can promise you. You'll be joining a community that's ready to grow, ready to serve, ready to follow where God is leading, ready to support you as you lead us. Portland is a wonderful city, vibrant, historic, and full of possibility. And this cathedral is a place where journeys are embraced, nurtured, and celebrated. Our parish is seeking our next spiritual leader, while that person is seeking their path to us. Through mutual discernment, our paths will cross. Is God calling you to this moment, to this cathedral, to this community? We're waiting to meet you.
Wow. Again, thank you, John. I know John isn't with us in person. If you're watching on the live stream again, thank you, John. We really appreciate your help with that. So we did that video as a way of trying to communicate with the candidates that we're discerning their call to come and be with us. But as you have looked at that, it's really drawn from the work that we did, and in terms of our job description and in terms of something known as the ministry portfolio, which is a document that the Office of Transition Ministry. Office of Transition Ministry from the National Church does for all Episcopal churches to look and to find new priests. And the interesting thing about that is we as a congregation did one, and then the candidates also did a very similar portfolio of similar kinds of questions. So with that, I'm going to stop now, and I'm going to ask Misha Pride to come up and discuss. He was the person that led us in the creation of this and herded us through. And so Misha, talk about a little bit about this.
Sure. So imagine you are trying to find a placement. You are discerning a new path for yourself. You are a happy minister, happy clergy somewhere, but you know that there's more, and you want to find that place. And so what do you do? Well, the Episcopal Church has created something called the Office of Transition Ministry, and in that Office of Transition Ministry, they have a way to look for opportunities that may be what your calling is going to be. And so when you go and you look, they ask each parish that is looking to call new clergy to fill out a ministry portfolio. And that ministry portfolio is 12 questions. And many of you may even have done some of this work with us in the fall, I believe at the World Cafe or another event near that. You may have been asked to answer some questions. Questions like, describe your liturgical style and practice for all types of worship services provided by your community, or describe a moment in your worshiping community's recent ministry which you recognize as one of success and fulfillment. Now, imagine that you're someone like me who's been attending for a very long time, and you read that question. It's really hard because I know the diversity of people who are in our cathedral that might answer that question very, very differently. A moment? How can I pick one moment out of an entire year or entire 16 years Well, it's recent. But anyway, an entire, 2-3 years of being here. So much happens in our community. So this was a big job. And what made this job more difficult is we only had 14,400 words total. Characters, not words, characters. That's the important thing, because at first we thought words, and then we found out characters, and it became a lot harder. Characters. So that's 1,200 characters per answer, and that is somewhat of an artificial limit, because this ministry portfolio is filled out online, and the online form that you submit to the website only allows 1,200 characters, so there is no room for any kind of leeway at all. So we took some of the work that you had already done. We took some of those answers that we had gotten in the fall. In fact, we took all of them. We took all of the answers we had been given in the fall as the parish did that work. And we formed a subcommittee, and we reviewed those answers, and then the subcommittee looked both qualitatively and quantitatively at the answers we had gotten from the parish, and we created bullet points of what we thought were the most common or qualitatively appropriate answers to each question. So we created bullet points that we hoped would guide us into creating a narrative response after each of those questions. Some of them were easy, like the liturgical style. We discussed various liturgies that we have here. In fact, if you listen closely to John Hennessy, he actually answered he used some of our answers to create how he talked about the cathedral. In fact, the very first thing he did was talk about how in June we had such a successful June of welcoming 16 new and renewed members, and that's exactly how we talked about the moment. We decided instead of a moment, one event, we talked about June because it was such a spark for us that all those things happened in June, whether it was Pride or welcoming new members. We decided that was just a good picture of who we were. So we used that. And so we went through, and first we did bullet points. And then, after we had our bullet points together, we started crafting some narrative responses, and we actually submitted these bullet points. You may remember on a bulletin board out here, we posted the 12 questions, and we posted our bullet point ideas, and we asked you to comment. Which of these bullet points did you think were most relevant to that question, the best answers? And then you could also fill out your own OTM. Again, knowing that this was now going to be used for the call of our dean, you could fill it out again and submit it to us. And in fact, we got a lot of really good submissions. And that first question, that first answer about June actually came from one of those submissions. It didn't even make it through our bullet point process. So we were really happy to get a lot of responses from a lot of different parishioners. And it really, I think for me, we've been very prayerful, very deliberative as we've moved through this process. And having such great participation really answered my prayers. And so after we had the bullet points and the answers from everyone, we started working on narratives. And at first, we didn't care too much about length. We tried to fit things when we could into 1,200 characters, but we knew that we were going to submit these to the entire committee, and so some wordsmithing and other things could happen then. And so that was our next step, was submitting these. I think it was November. We submitted these to the entire committee. We've been meeting every other week. And the committee reviewed them. And for the most part, we felt that we had really solid things, but then there were some pieces that didn't feel quite right, and they needed some more discernment and some more work. And so we worked through some of the pieces that other people felt weren't right. And in fact, I wrote one of the answers, and I immediately said after I read it to everyone, I don't think that's the right answer. So, and that got reworked, and we found something that worked better. And so it took time. It took a lot of time. This was probably one of the more challenging things. But what I think we got out of it was more than just something that showed everybody else looking and discerning for a new position who we are. It also helped us encapsulate who we are, so that as we move forward in deciding what kind of characteristics and values and that we would need in a new dean, or that we would want to call to our church, we were able to use the answers about who we are to help us discern that as well. But we did more work on that, and I am going to, I think, pass it back to Philip, who is going to transition us through that.
Thank you, Misha. This is no mystery. This is published on our website. I have I did 4 copies because I didn't want to see 25 copies left in the pews on the way out. But please, I'll leave them on the table. Take them if you'd like. And if you are interested, it is on the Dean Search page of the website. So I want to just clarify one thing. John was kind enough to do the video. We actually provided him with a script. And as you can see, the script actually maps to the documents that we have. So Phoebe, would you come and talk a little bit about our job description? And you heard John talk a little bit about it, but how we developed that. Thank you.
Thank you. All right. Hi, everyone. So the description we worked on kind of in tandem and sort of towards the end of putting the OTM together. So the OTM has a lot of more specific opportunities to share more specific moments and a little bit of nuance there. The job description is essentially our one-page summary document that we are putting out and saying, in this short summary, here is who we are hoping to come and join us. And this is on the website as well, so if you haven't already gotten a chance to look at it there, please do. But it starts with, and this little blurb is directly on the website as well before you click on the actual job description. But our emphasis is saying that we seek a clergy leader who can guide our congregation with deep faith and compassion. We seek a person of prayer and a preacher of Christ's love who can lead us as we grow, change, and care for others and ourselves. So again, this was done kind of in tandem and then towards the end of finalizing the OTM. So a lot of that parish-wide input that came to answer specific questions, we could then pull from as well as we're crafting the job description. We also had input from George and saying, hey, can you describe this job to us? Along with your input, as well as the cathedral's vision and core values, looking at other job descriptions for figuring out how to craft those as well. So similar to the OTM, also originally written up by a smaller group of the committee, shared with all of us for further feedback and clarification. And then it was finalized in November after review from the full committee, lesser chapter, Bishop George, and the wardens. And it is again on the website, so please do take a look for it there. We also then, at this point, so we've had all this input, doing a lot of wordsmithing, crafting, figuring out how to say what it is that we are hoping for. We can then turn sort of back around, and we are now using these documents also to help identify what are the key points that we are looking for. So now as we are taking in, and this is going to be, I think, further spoken to a little bit, but as we are now reading through and reviewing all the applications that are coming in, we can then use these to match and make sure that as we are looking through applications, the information that we are getting from the candidates matches with what we are holding at our core. And I just wanted to conclude with the final sentence of our job description that just says our parish is seeking our next spiritual leader. Well, that person is speaking their path to us, and through mutual discernment, our paths will cross.
Thank you, Phoebe. So that gives you a sense of what we did from the time that we were commissioned in August to just about Thanksgiving. And then there was a little bit, 10 days or 2 weeks because of Thanksgiving to actually get the posting up and sent out to the world. Because we've been hearing a lot of knocks on the door. We hear you looking for a dean. When is it going to be available? So it was then that it was finally up. So what have we been doing since Thanksgiving to the 31st of January? We've been thinking about, well, we have these documents. What are the characteristics that we're looking for? What are the questions that we want to ask people? And then, equally as important, how are we going to come to a commonality about listening to the answers to the questions that we've been posing. So I'd like Elise and Laura to come up and talk a little bit about the questions and then the evaluation.
Good morning. So we took all of the work that had already been done and started to tease it apart a little bit. You know, having taken all the stuff and put it together, now we're taking it back apart to keep, to figure out how do we want to be able to identify what we said we wanted. So we have identified the attributes, and we ranked them sort of in most important to almost as most important, because they were all the most important, so that took some work. But we have come up with questions, and we're going to ask everybody the same questions in the same order so that we can compare similar responses, so that everybody's getting the same questions from the same people almost all the time, which allows us to look at things in a sort of a uniform way, which is what I will let Laura tell you about.
Yeah, good to see so many people. Thank you. In order to guide our entry into discernment with all of the people who have put their names forward, we wanted to have a unified way of reading through the documents that they submitted. And so what we did was we took the criteria, which were really very clearly stated by John Hennessy in the video, and created a rubric. And one thing that perhaps is unique about the rubric is it's, and I'll speak to the numbers in a moment, it's a 4-point scale. We aren't going to get anyone who's a 3 out of 5. You must make some sort of discerning decision about each category as you, or each criteria as you read them. The numbers, however, do not in any way signify who's best in the class or anything. They provide the beginning of a discussion. That's all I'll say about that. But maybe I could take a moment or two to speak from my own heart. And perhaps for others, but the faith that you have placed in us to be part of this committee has been personally very important to me. It's allowed a group of people, some of whom I knew, some I didn't, to come together as some sort of a holy body. And the work we're doing isn't just a job search, I hope. It is work where we're really trying to learn and understand each other. And in committees like this, you may not feel it, but I think that's where God is. And I personally am really grateful for the opportunity to serve.
Thank you, Laura. I appreciate that. Elise, will you stay with me for a minute? So really what we wanted to do now was to hear you. And I am absolutely thrilled that so many of you have stayed to join us now. And we want to hear your questions. Sam tells me that there are 51 people. Oh, no, 15? You said you were doing this. It was 6 at that point. It was 6. Okay, I like 51 better. So Sam says there will be people who, after they've had their luncheon, will come in and listen to it. So questions. Who has some questions? If you raise your hand, then Elise will go take the microphone to you, and then I'll try to figure out whom of our committee might be the best person to ask.
Just so you know, when you use the microphone, this is really for y'all. When you use the microphone, if you're on the edges, sometimes the receiver won't get it. So you may need to step to the middle for the receiver to actually catch the microphone's work, okay? So if you're over here and you start talking and it's quiet, it may not be you, it may be the microphone receiver.
And it's really important to use the microphone for the 51 people that are listening on the live stream. So who is the first question? Let's go to Jamie in the back and then Bob. Thank you. You saw what was in my eye. It's like, I know that name. It's coming, it's coming, it's coming. There it is. Like, Jamie.
It's not a question. It's an expression of gratitude of how much work you've done. So grateful, you know.
Can you hear me?
Yes.
The amount of work you've done is overwhelming. And whether or not the Holy Spirit is with you, we'll have to wait and see. But what I want to say is very simple. I was a parish priest for 65 years. I have 9 graduate degrees. What I most am concerned about is, does the person show that he or she has assimilated our Lord's command? And that command is called in Greek the kerygma, because it means you have outlined and proclaimed that Jesus is the Christ. And if people don't emphasize that, then I think we may be going in the wrong direction.
Thank you, Bob. Oh, okay. I'm going to actually ask Elise to talk to that a little bit, because Elise is the one person on our committee that says, I want to know how this person's relationship is with Jesus. And so why don't you talk a little bit about that?
I want to know about the relationship with Jesus. We are, as a church and as a cathedral, we get to do all the God talk very comfortably here. And we get to get somebody who loves God, who loves Jesus, who wants to help us grow into the people God created us to be, and to serve the people God wants us to serve. And I think that is just so critical. And so I keep bringing God up.
Thank you, Elise. Bob, that answered the Jesus person of the Christ. I know that theologians sometimes talk about Christi or the Christ as kind of a little bit different concept. Did we get to the concept that you were trying to get to?
In nearly everything we do, does the person give you any evidence that he appreciates and feels, or she, yeah, I think I said she the first time, do they understand being in the presence of God? And that means they understand and have assimilated the rhythms and the energies that come from knowing Jesus as the Christ.
The answer to that will be yes. And we have been very clear that, God forbid, we have a failed search, because they don't have that. We will simply do another search, and we will keep searching until we find somebody who does.
Okay, thank you. Thank you for that question. And would you want to redirect? Okay. Julia, thank you, Julia. Are there other questions that I can be thinking?
Mine is a very boring procedural question compared to Bob's. I'm a little bit unclear about how the questions and the ranking goes out of a 1 to 5, and are those different questions weighted, so you're coming up with kind of a matrix for this? Can you dive into that?
So I'm going to pass that along to Laura, who came up with our rubric, and John, too, if you have anything to say about that.
Yeah. Thank you for that. The rubric, no, the questions are not weighted, and the scores are only meant to guide our discussion. This committee, I could say, is not in any way an object of groupthink. And I guarantee that there will be good discussion of, and different points in the written materials particularly strike those of us differently, and that is where we begin to decide. But we needed a programmatic way of reading the applications. And again, the criteria are very similar to those that John Hennessy outlined in the video. Is that helpful? Thank you.
You know, I'll just add one thing practically. When you're looking at a stack of applications, and I'll refer to it as a stack, although it's all electronic nowadays, so most of us did not print anything out. I had the luxury of being quarantined for a few days, so I could sit undisturbed and go through a number of applications while they were all fresh in my mind. Imagine if you're also working full-time and you got to stretch that out over 7, 10, 14 days. Applying a fairly standard approach to each one of them, to give them each fair consideration, is hard. It's really challenging. And fortunately, we have Laura and others on the committee who've professionally done a lot of interviewing and said, you know, there are ways to do this. There are ways to approach it in an organized manner that can help to reduce the risks of just having a bad moment when you happen to be reading someone's application and not giving them fair consideration.
Thank you, John. I think there was a question over on this side of the room.
So when I came in today, the thing on my, I think I'm in the wrong corner, that we have just taken on an aspirational budget. And I'm hoping that there's lots of room in the committee for an aspirational search. And as a former teacher who used rubrics, they were a good beginning. And what was exciting is being open enough to students that stood outside the rubric. And I hope the committee will do that.
Thank you. I don't know if you can see, but over here, everyone's heads is doing this because we really want to make sure that our work is well served going forward. We have a question over here, and I think I'm going to ask Ruth to talk a little about aspiration when she comes up and talks in a minute.
Actually, this is more of a comment. 1,200 characters.
1440.
1440.
You can't hear?
Okay. Yeah, I mean, if you think about this, of what an incredible ask this was, if you've ever done something like this, 1,200 divided by 6 gives you 200 words. Once you take out those for basically punctuation, you are now down to 150 words. And the challenge here, which you guys took on, which is to try to make something out of that gives nuance in expression, that's an incredible task. My hat is off to you.
Thank you. Thank you. We're coming up on time. I promised 45 minutes, so we're not quite there, but I want to just be conscious of that. We have one question over here. Elise? No, but the 51 people online can't hear you.
Sorry, I'll shout. No, I'm only kidding. So my question is just, I think it's a next step, and I just am unaware of this. I was on a search committee once, and we met the candidates in person. Will you be meeting candidates in person or through Zoom? I'm just curious how it works, and do they come here or not?
Yes and
Go to
yes.
a different pulpit? I don't know any of that.
Yeah, yes and yes. So
Oh, whoops, I'm sorry.
we'll start with Zoom, and then we will see people in person, and that's how it will go. In the back, there's Elise. There's one more. We'll do after this question. Raise your hand if there's one more. Okay, one more after this one.
This is a simple question, I hope. I hope I'm allowed to. How many applications have we received so far?
Ruth?
So the last time I talked with you, I said there were 11. Any guesses for what and that was as of the 20th? 51. Not quite 51, it was 21. And the point that George made this morning, they came from North America, not just the US, North America, all over the place. And you talk about, Petra, aspirational. We're inspired by those 21. It's a ton of stuff to wade through. I say wade through, but again, to John's point, to take our time and really take in someone who chooses to write 8 pages in their resume or 3 pages in their cover letter, never mind all the pages that go with everybody's ministry profile, times 21. I don't have a number of pages top of mind because I haven't counted them, but trust me, there's a lot. And one thing that someone mentioned recently in the committee that felt so good to them about those candidates is everyone talked about how pleased they were to be able to ask to be considered. There was none of the 21 who said, oh, pick me, I'm the best since sliced bread. And so we're encouraged by that. So it's a lot, but it's a good lot. And we are taking the time to give each person the kind of consideration that they need. And the point that I think Laura made, we have a great committee. People coming from a lot of different places and backgrounds. And because we've worked long enough together, people are willing to say, to frown even, and someone will say, you look like you have a question. Or someone will say, and someone whose name shall remain not spoken, will wait. Sometimes he looks, and we now tease him and say, okay, Philip has an idea. All right, Philip. And sometimes he will say, don't hate me, but that for me is a reflection of the mutual trust that we've created, that we're willing to hear after we think we've put it to bed, someone come back and say, I really have a concern about this, that, or the other, and we listen. So pray that we continue.
Thank you, Ruth. We had one more question here, and with that, then Ruth will finish.
You mentioned that St. Paul's in Brunswick recently did this process well, and I was wondering if they had any insights for this.
Well, we've gotten those insights informally in that the chair of that search committee is a member of our committee. So as we're working through procedural things, I think it happened yesterday, Ruth looked to Pat and said, well, how did you do that? And that becomes a starting point or a launching point. Also, just real quickly, we were talking about aspirational budgets. At some point on this, we had to figure out, well, what compensation package? So one of the things you do is you go and look at the market, and that was the most recent tick in hiring a person. So that person was very kind to share, and so that gave us a sense of how to do compensation as well. So thank you. And I'm not seeing any more questions. So was the one? Oh, John.
If I can just follow on Philip's answer to that question, we also discovered a number of differences. Calling a rector is a very different process than calling a dean for a cathedral. The role of the cathedral is a parish plus. So there were things that we had to, with Pat's help, we had to discern, oh, it's similar in these aspects, but it's different in these other. And that's been a real learning process for all of us.
Thank you, John. So now we're about ready to wrap up. And as we are going, our chairman, Ruth Romer, is going to talk. And I just want to stop for a second and affirm with each one of you that this cathedral is amazingly lucky to have Ruth leading this group. One, because she has the technical skills from her career in terms of how to think about hiring, how to think about building systematic ways so that we are fair to ourselves and to the candidate. She has this wonderful grace that when you have 10 people with calendars trying to get anything done is almost impossible. So she has this amazing skill about herding cats. So thank you, Ruth.
Thank you, Philip. And again, I think it's Laura's comment. I think we all feel that this is such a gift and such a responsibility. So we really take this very seriously. We know that what we're doing is so important to the future of this cathedral. So again, we ask for your prayers. And just in summary, we have all of the 21. We need to be finishing our discernment, scheduling interviews, talking to people, and ultimately bringing people in and then making a final recommendation to the bishop and to the lesser chapter for who it is the committee feels is important. I just want to go back to the 21 to say there were also, at the very beginning when we were commissioned, there were questions, and there have continued to be questions about the bishop and his thumb on the scale. How much influence will the bishop have? And I can say to you that we have all and every candidate who has applied. There's been no thumb on the scale. They've come, they're vetted in terms of, are they legally ordained? Do they legally have a right to be working here in the US? Those kinds of legal questions that would be red flags. But beyond that, we have everyone who said they wanted to be considered. And I think that's important to say out loud explicitly, that we have been treated with the respect that we think we deserve. We think we are a committee who has the capacity and the willingness to discern and differentiate. And we've been given that by the bishop and his staff. So we're now moving into a period of silence. The next thing you'll hear from us publicly will be through an announcement of the person that's been selected. So you can ask us questions, and that's totally fine, but we won't be talking about the individuals. And we won't be talking about who was moved forward and who may not have been moved forward. Those are all the confidentiality pieces that we'll hold carefully. And I think all I want to do is close our time together by rereading the prayer for the search committee that was read this morning in the prayers. And each week there is a reading of a prayer that for the committee, because I want again to say, please now, if you haven't been praying for us, start. Because we got a lot of differentiating to do, and we want to do it well. We want to listen. So, pray with me. Almighty God, giver of every good gift, look graciously on your church And so guide the hearts and minds of those on the Dean Search Committee as they come to know more deeply the calling of those who are waiting for our call. Guide us in patience as we discern your will. Help us to prepare thoughtfully to receive a faithful dean who will care for your people, equip us for ministry, and lead us forth in fulfillment of the Great Commission. Through Jesus Christ our Lord. Amen.
Thanks, everybody. Now there were 7 at the end.
Thank you very much. Great.